Today, we have a fantastic presentation for y'all with some lovely internal experts over here at Drata, but we're going to be discussing measuring the effectiveness of your risk management program. So my name is Elliot. I lead the creative team over here. Before we actually kick into things, I just want to highlight our quick agenda. Today, Ross and team are going to be talking about what risk management is, of course, the business perspective of managing risk, common missteps in risk management, how risk management drives accountability, and risk management in compliance operations. So before I hand it off, we're going to do a quick poll. All right, so that poll should be up in front of y'all. Feel free to take a couple of seconds to pick your choice, and then we will share the results out. So how do you manage and measure your risk management program? So right now it is based on the number of risk monitor is across the board unanimous. Everyone has selected that. But as we go through that presentation, maybe that will change your opinion. That being said, I'm going to hand this off to Ross and we will get into the meat of this presentation.
Hey everyone, my name is Ross Hausman. I'm the CISO here at Drata. I'm also an investor in Drata through SVCI, which is a group of CISOs that invest in security startups. My team owns security, compliance, and IT. Actually, it's more than compliance, it's more full GRC. And so with me today, I have Olive. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, I am the Director of Compliance here at Drata, and I've been doing this for a couple of decades. Definitely governance, risk, and compliance is under my supervision right now. It's been a pleasure working with the Drata solution and be happy to answer any questions related.
Yeah, and if you all haven't seen, we are big on drinking our own champagne. So we, have a SOC 1 Type 2, SOC 2 Type 2, SOC 3. We are HIPAA attested. We have our ISO 27001. We are GDPR and CCPA compliant. We have a CAIQ. We are Privacy Shield certified, and Olive and her team handles all of that, as well as our risk management program. They are an amazing group of individuals. So if you have any questions, even outside of risk, we're happy to answer them today. Also with us, I have Joshua. Joshua, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm Josh, the Manager of Information Security here at Drata. And being in information security, I get to work closely with the risk and compliance side of things too. So excited for this kind of stuff.
And just really quick on this slide. So typically, teams have handled risk management in Excel spreadsheets or Google Sheets, one of the two. So your risk management, your risk register is typically in these, and it's a very manual process, and you can't really tie it to assets and things like that. So what Drata has done is we've launched our new risk management module here, where we'll start be able to tie risk to vulnerabilities or control failures or other things, just general risk, right? And the idea is, hey, we want to start showing trends and dashboards over time. That's not in the product yet, but it is coming. And so we're trying to get people out of spreadsheets into something that's a little more custom built for you. And also to help you track risk better, right? So for us, before we use Jira, and we use a 2-person sign-off in Jira for our risk, which we'll get into. But we really want to start doing this in the platform and tracking it better in the platform. So when your auditors come in, or if a third party comes in, you can kind of show, hey, this was signed off, and here's how we manage risk well. All right, that was the quick pitch. What is risk management? This is one of those things where if you're doing risk management right, it's just gonna kind of love it and kind of, go along with it. People, are not going to notice your risk management program all that much. You should be communicating your risk, you should be managing your risk, but risk shouldn't necessarily be drive how you do business, right? How you drive business is how you kind of manage risk. Business perspective of managing risk. I'm not going to read every word on here. I will let you kind of do, but the big overall thing here is your business should be deciding the amount of risk you are willing to take, or the type of risk you are willing to take. Early in my career, I was very risk adverse. Let's take no risk. We shouldn't have any of these issues, or everything should be fixed. And it should just be, we should just be doing it perfectly. And that's just not how business works, right? And I've told this story a few times, but the thing that really changed my mindset here is when I worked at JP Morgan, Pat Opet, William Opet, who is now the global CISO of JP Morgan, took me aside and said, "Hey, Ross, JP Morgan is in the business of taking risk. Every credit card we give out is a risk. Every loan we give out is a risk. Every transaction we're doing, there's risk involved in all of this. And we're okay taking risk. We just want to take smart risk. We don't want to take dumb risk, right?" And so really changed my mindset around this. If the biggest bank in the world goes, "Yeah, I'm willing to take on all this risk, as long as it's smart," then why can't other companies, right? Why can't Drata take on risk, or previous companies I've worked at? And that really just changed my mindset around risk. You are going to have risk in your business. And the question is, what kind of risk are you willing to take and where? And this is for us as security or compliance professionals to understand from our leadership and executive team. Like, we will take a business risk on, let's say, maybe using a newer product that isn't as well known because we believe it's going to help our sales team increase sales by 60%, right? We will take that risk. We are okay with that if they don't have every security control that we absolutely need. We will push them to have it. We will make them contractually commit to having it in the future, but we are going to take that risk because it's going to push our business forward. And that's a smart risk that we're willing to take. We are not going to take a bad risk, right? Like, we ensure that all of our infrastructure is pushed as code today and scanned. We are not going to suddenly tomorrow, because somebody in the DevOps team wants to start manually changing things or going and building things out in production, allow that to happen, right? That's a dumb risk. We're just not going to do it. And so really, this is up to you, your business, and your executive team. So please spend some time with them. Like, what is your risk appetite? Where do you want me as a leader in the GRC function or the security function to stand up for the business, for our customers, and for our people? And how do you want me to engage there? And also, when you think about risk or security in general, I would say, just remember your customers come first, and protect your customers at all costs, even before the business, because without customers, you don't have a business. Here, let's talk about risk. These key things here. Compliance alignment, right? Many of us have compliance programs or compliance standards that we are trying to meet. We have our own, our SOC 1 or SOC 2, HIP, ISO. So in these programs, a lot of them say, "Hey, thou shalt manage risk," right? And you should have a risk management program and stuff like that. They also, a lot of them, if you're doing PCI or others, they will have outright security controls, right? And so you have to meet those security controls if you want to be attested or have mitigating controls or things like that. So one of the things that you want to align your risk program to is, what compliance do we have to pass, right? And this is bigger, I would say, organizations that have to pass things like PCI or HITRUST, right? Where there is, hey, you really, really need to meet these controls type of thing. And so the organization should understand, like, hey, we have to do these things to meet it, to meet this standard, and we can't take a risk here, right? Or we can, but we have to put in this mitigating control. So make sure your business and your compliance team is aligned, right? We have a lot of things that we ourselves can't do that we understand as a business because we need to go meet our compliance goals or our compliance frameworks. I would say the goal of a risk management program is also to mature your business practices. Drata has gone through just a massive transformation here. Last July, I think we had 30 something people. We now have 300, right? And if you think about the maturity of a program with 30 plus people versus 300, it is massively different. And the things that we've put in place around our security or our compliance or, our risk management or our governance are just massive, right? If you look a year ago, we only had our SOC 2. We've added all those compliance frameworks as well as regulatory compliance and things like that due to Olive and her team's excellent work. And that's made us mature a lot in how we do things. We have a better DSAR process. We have a much, much better security posture these days due to Josh and his team's work. We have a fantastic onboarding and offboarding process around how we ensure those things are happening. Because to be honest, onboarding and offboarding is one of the key things that will get you bitten when you're going through your compliance audit, right? And so we've matured quite a bit. And then I would say the last thing is, just business alignment. Make sure that, your program here is to help your business, right? I never believe that risk or security should be used as a hammer just to go beat people about the head, right? Like, we're a business, we can do basically, let's make sure it's aligned to those goals. And as we're doing risk management, let's make sure we try and align things. It's never going to be 100% aligned. And trust me, we've had to say no, and we do when we need to. But overall, we try and figure out more the how. When and how to say no to your business. So where to accept risk and where to draw the line. And this is a great question. I love this one. This is probably the hardest thing for any security or GRC professional out there. Of what do I accept or where do I draw the line? To me, it is the business for the most part that should draw the line, right? In our risk management program, there is a risk owner, and that is the person who owns this risk. And we have, I think 6 or 7 risks right now on our board for ones that we haven't closed out. And so in technology, right, there may be some sort of issue that we can't go fix right this second, but we know it's gonna be fixed in a month or something like that. And so we will go to our CTO, Daniel, and say, hey, Daniel, like, this shouldn't be this way. We've said that, hey, we're going to do this way. This needs to be fixed. We know that, hey, it can't be fixed right this second. So therefore, we have to open a risk on this. And Daniel, you need to go convince another executive that this risk is okay. We make it so that you cannot accept your own risk here at Drata. Some other executive, either, the CEO or, the head of product or somebody like that, will also need to sign off on this risk. The reason we do this is it makes it so people are held accountable, right? If you can just accept your own risk, as I've seen in other companies, a lot of people will absolutely just go, yep, I accept that. Cool. That's easy for you to do, but the business as a whole should be accepting the risk, not just individuals. And so that's why we put in this 2-person accountability for our own. We also have to be willing to accept the risk, or, Josh, Olive, and myself need to be willing to accept this risk to the business. Risks that we won't accept are dumb risks, right? We will not accept stupid risk here. You cannot just start going and deploying EC2 instances in production because you need to go do something really quick. That is not a risk that we're going to take. You cannot just give sales folks access to the database because they need to see certain customer data or something like that. That is not a risk we will take. And so really, we set kind of a hard line around, are we doing the right thing for our customer is the number 1 thing. Are we doing the right thing for our employees is the number 2 thing. Are we doing the right thing for our business is the number 3 thing. And if any of those are violated, then we will say, hey, this is not a risk we are going to take or we are willing to take. And we've said that before. We've absolutely gone to the business, and it's very few and far in between. And so the business knows we're serious when we're saying, hey, this is not a risk we can take. And that line, that's kind of up to each individual or each team as we work on a team around what's our line. And for me, anything that puts customer data or our customer at risk is absolutely unacceptable. And so we won't cross that line. That is a red line for me, where even if the CEO said, hey, I want this, I would say, no, we can't do it. And, most people would say, well, the CEO can do what they want. It's their business. Maybe, but for me personally, there are lines that I will not cross. And so I think it's up to you as the individual. What hills are you willing to die on? And for me, it's putting customers at risk or customer data at risk due to stupid decisions. And that's kind of my spiel around when you're supposed to say no to your business. Just, for risk, I think most people know this. You can accept it, mitigate it, transfer it, fix it, avoid it, whatever. You have to have a risk owner. For us, you also have to have a risk acceptor. You can't have a risk without somebody that is responsible for it. And doing nothing is not a solution. You can't just go, well, that's a risk. We're just going to ignore it. No, you need to track it. You need to own it. Somebody needs to come in and accept it, fix it, whatever. Do you have any other thoughts here on this one?
Yeah, I definitely agree that, it is a business decision, but there are people in those roles that kind of have to check some of those decisions that they've made and kind of say, hey, but have you thought about this? This could affect this other thing that they may not have even thought of. Maybe it's affecting their compliance posture, their security posture, legal requirements they have with their clients. So I think that's why it's more of a consensus. It may be that an executive has agreed to it, but it's best to discuss it with other people within other departments within like security or compliance, just to make sure that all areas are reviewed and that we understand that it may have impacts outside of that one risk. And it's kind of like a domino effect, just understanding that it may not just be a clear risk, it may impact other areas of the business as well.
For sure. Yeah, this goes back to, hey, is it aligned to your overall business goals, right? And, one business leader may say, hey, I want this specific thing done, which will absolutely impact another part of the business in the future. And hey, you can't do this. We've seen this, between business units. Marketing will want something that could affect sales in the future, or technology will want something that could affect sales in the future. And we have to say, hey, this is probably not the right idea. Josh, did you have any thoughts as well in here from a security perspective?
Yeah, I think you guys covered it pretty well, that it's not just up to kind of one decision, it's kind of looking at it holistically.
Cool. Josh, the security team here even has risk at times. I think I've been assigned a risk before as a risk owner. I think it's really important to kind of, again, drink your own champagne and call yourself out, right? Hey, your security program is never going to be perfect either. Hey, we know that there's a risk here over in this area or with this product, or hey, we're not collecting these logs properly. Hey, we should go open a risk against ourselves and hold ourselves accountable. All right, this is a big one. There is no perfect way to do risk management. There's a whole bunch of frameworks and you can go follow them if you so wish. I think in a lot of companies, you're going to see a lot of different ideas around risk management. The way we handle risk management here is we think about actual risks to the business. These are things that are here. We have this risk. Here it is. It's right here today. We need to go do something about this. We don't deal in theoretical risk. And I've seen so many people get bogged down in theoretical risks to the business, right? And an example of this is, well, we're in 2 different AWS regions, right? And the compliance person I've seen before goes, well, what happens if AWS totally goes down? We should track a risk that if AWS totally goes down, the business is down. Okay, yes, AWS can completely go down. And it has when US East 1 goes down. There's been issues around that. But is that really a risk to your business? I mean, Maybe if you are promising, 100% SLAs and stuff like that to your customers, which you shouldn't be doing anyway. But what's the likelihood of this risk? And what are you going to do about it? Right? Are you going to go spend, another $500,000 on infrastructure and another cloud provider and have to manage all of that? Like, probably not. And so this is where I get into actual risk. What are the things that are right in front of us that can impact our business or our customers or our employees? Those are the things we should track. AWS going down is highly unlikely, or the entire thing being wiped out is highly unlikely. It may go down. It may be down for hours. It may be down for a day, but AWS itself completely down or completely gone, like unlikely. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. They'll be fine. So I would just say use actual risk. Don't use theoretical. Don't overestimate risk. Don't use risk to block progress. I've seen a lot of security teams or GRC folks see that, the technology team is trying to do something they don't really like. And so they will try and go open a risk against that to say, hey, you can't do this, right? This is a risk to our business. Using that, people will stop believing the risk that you bring them. If all of a sudden people need to start using Windows laptops for a reason, and you don't like Windows laptops, and you say, well, Windows laptops have a risk because they're more vulnerable than MacBook, people aren't going to take you really seriously, right? It's up to the business to kind of decide, hey, do we want to go support, two different platforms for end user computing, but you shouldn't go open a risk about it. And I've seen just so many security and GRC teams kind of do that. And it just really invalidates your risk management program. And then the last thing is infrequent risk management. You should be tracking your risk. You shouldn't just let them sit there. You should be updating them. You should be telling your leadership team, hey, here are the top 5 risks that we have to the business. And they should know. They should also be looking at risk trends and things like that. Are we adding more risk? What kind of risk? Are they high, critical, medium, low type risk? And you should be communicating with. Not all risks are worth tracking. This is something that Olive and I are really lockstep on around. An example we've seen is people want to say, well, this control failed and it's failing right now. That's a risk, and I should immediately go open that and track it as a risk. No, just because a control fails doesn't mean it's an immediate risk to the business, right? Like, you can go fix that control within a certain amount of time before you even need to open a risk. Now, if it's just a massive control that absolutely puts your business at risk, that's a different discussion. But every control failure, every vulnerability, every issue that you have out there is not worth tracking. Use your risk register or risk management to track big risks to the business, I would say. Olive, what are your thoughts here on this one?
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like there are controls that fail, which is normal. And there's a period of time where that control can be corrected, and that's something that's normal. That's something that you should have built in your process. And you don't want to track every little thing, because then you're going to flood your risk management process, and your risks will be kind of just filled with things that aren't truly things that you need to be concerned about, because they're not major risk and they're interim risks. So yeah, I mean, for example, if you had something such as you've got a security awareness training program and a few people just haven't completed, that's something that you shouldn't even think about as a risk. But for example, if you had no program, that may be an actual risk, because now you have nothing in place and you have requirements in order to meet certain standards or frameworks. And that is something that's very different than a few people who haven't just completed their training. That's just an example of that's just to give a frame of reference there. But yeah, totally agree with you on that, with not actually, recording every single thing that could possibly be a risk.
Yeah, for sure. I think the next bullet point here, internal solutions are not always better. This is a thing that kind of cracks me up, because we see this so much in the security space, Josh, where we see security professionals go, well, we need to run this internally, right? Because there's too much risk, there's too much sensitive data, or there's all of this, right? Like we should run it internally. We take the approach that we don't want to run things. We want to use SaaS solutions that allow our business to go quickly, that will often give us higher fidelity, security than trying to run things internally ourselves. We don't want to run servers. Running servers itself is a risk to the business, right? You have to start doing really good patch management and stuff like that. We would rather have a really good third-party risk management program and vet the hell out of our vendors and allow our business to go quickly by using these third-party solutions. This is something that I feel like security teams really need to embrace, and our team has really done so. If you look at everything we do in security, we are using SaaS or PaaS or something in that space rather than trying to run our own stuff. Josh, what are your thoughts kind of around this? I mean, I know we run one or two things that we couldn't outsource, but for the most part, we try and use those type of solutions.
Yeah, like again, I think it comes down to a balance of evaluating the risk. If it is a solution that is going to be like a sub processor and would have a high potential for like customer impact, that you might want to consider internally, but definitely for the low risk ones, you can just move way faster and enable the business by using a SaaS solution.
Yeah, I'll give you all a story. I mean, so I was at Google Cloud's Financial Security Summit. It's part of JP Morgan, and Diane Green and some of the other Google Cloud executives were up on stage. And one of the executives from some financial deputy CISO or something stood up and told Diane Green, who was the CEO of Google Cloud at the time, well, I don't believe in cloud and I'm trying to stop my company from going to cloud. Cool, man. Why the hell are you here? Like, you should leave. Please leave now. You are not helping your business. You are hindering your business. And the idea that your own teams are going to do it better than Google or Amazon is just ludicrous to me, because I've seen so many companies that have their own data centers and they don't do it well, right? Like, they are not managing access well. They are not, because they don't have the resources and the spending to be able to do the things that Google and Amazon can do. And so this is one of those things where, hey, outsourcing, to cloud providers actually increases your security, it increases your compliance, and overall improves your business. And then just the last thing, risks require continuous monitoring. I think that kind of speaks for itself. Yeah, risk management should drive accountability in your company. We talked about, hey, there should be a risk owner and a risk acceptor. I do not own risks for the business. Olive does not own risks for the business. Josh does not own risks for the business. The people that create the risk own the risk for the business. And this is something that so many GRC and security people struggle with. I own the risk. I have to protect the company. I have to stop this. No, absolutely not. This is why people get burnt out and they get tired, because they constantly have the weight of the company on their shoulders. To me, risk is owned by the business and the executive team as a whole, and it is their responsibility to ensure that we are taking the appropriate risk for the business. And it's our job to highlight those risks, make sure we're following the appropriate process, and make sure that we don't take stupid risk. That is our team's job. But if we take a risk and it causes some sort of incident, that's not on the security team. That's not on the GRC team. None of our executives, because we've explained this to them, will come to us and say, why did you let this happen? You shouldn't have let this risk happen, or it's your fault. Absolutely not. We as a company have decided what risks we're going to take, what risks we're going to accept. And this is why we have the process that we do where multiple executives have to own and accept risk. Risk should be owned outside of the GRC team or enterprise risk management team. This is kind of what I'm talking about. GRC, ERM doesn't own the risk. They manage the risk, but they don't own it. Risk assessment acceptance should be based on impact. And this is kind of what we're talking about, taking smart risk, right? If you want to take a dumb risk that is critical to the business that puts us at risk, probably not. We probably won't let you accept it. You will need to transfer it, mitigate it, or just fix it. You're not going to be able to accept it. Low risk, but that is up for you to figure out. And again, what your business is willing to accept. So risk management and compliance operations. Yeah, I think we've kind of gone over this pretty heavily, but we could talk, SOC 2, ISO, HITRUST, PCI, others. They are going to make you have a risk management program. You should align your risk management program to your business and also follow some sort of documented process around this. A lot of times the compliance framework isn't descriptive in how you need to manage risk. It is more that you have a documented risk management program that you follow. The worst thing you can do is not have a program. And the second worst thing you could do is not follow what your program says you do. Thou shalt follow your program, or you need to go modify your program to ensure that it's meeting your business goals and requirements.
That is the extent of our presentation, which means we get to go into the fun Q&A session. So for those on the line, feel free to drop any questions that we have in the Q&A feature or chat, whichever you prefer. We do fortunately have about 5 different questions that came in during registration, but we'll obviously try to prioritize any questions that come in. But to give Ross and the team a little bit of breather before we start asking questions, we have one quick poll. So let me launch that for y'all. So our question is, does risk acceptance today impact growth? For the recipients, it looks like we have a balance between slightly and partially. So not too shocking there, but obviously what we had discussed today should help balance some of that out. Also, just so you're aware, if you have any additional questions after the fact, about 3-4 weeks ago, we launched the online community for Drata called Secure. So if you go to community.drata.com, you'll be able to ask any questions for our security team as well. If you're customers, obviously you already have access to our team and know where to ask, but let's jump into the Q&A. All right, let's start with number 1, which comes from Patricia. How do you realistically address review of access rights? Our current system asset register has hundreds of systems. It is not realistic to have access reviews for every system. Same goes for vendors.
A few things here. We do, to start kind of on the back end there, we review all of our vendors very heavily. We have certain requirements that we have out there. That doesn't mean we send them 300 question security questionnaires, because we hate those and we get those and our team has to answer them. They are not good. We focus on key critical things and do they have good processes? And usually this helps us weed companies out pretty quickly. So we manage all of our vendors, and then we require that our critical vendors are plugged into our centralized IDP. We use Okta today. And through Okta, it's managed by our IT and with the security team's help. And it basically controls all of our access to our applications, as well as the roles most of the time in all of our critical applications. So for instance, in AWS, we have multiple AWS environments. Access to those AWS environments is controlled by Okta, and you get a certain role in AWS based off of your group membership that you are assigned in Okta. We have no named accounts in AWS. This makes our AWS access review extremely simple because we can go into Okta and we can see who has that access, when did they get that access, everything like that. we then can go into AWS and show, our auditors that, hey, there are no named users in AWS. It is literally controlled by our IDP and always has been. There are solutions out here. If you have just a massive estate, we have a company that we use called Opal that has started doing access reviews to help in this space. There's also, a lot of other companies out there like SailPoint and things like that that you can go invest in. For us, the scope of our access review for a lot of things is what are the things that touch our application, our production, our customer data. Those are the things that we are spending most of the time doing our reviews on. So AWS, we're looking at GitHub, we're looking at Okta administrators, G Suite, Snowflake, things like that is where we are focusing our access reviews on. And so really, I would say scope it well. And if you need to, go find a third-party solution that can help you out there. For us, it isn't a big issue. We have a couple hundred SaaS apps, I think, and most of our review is focused on the things that affect production today. And then, and then, we have a great onboarding, offboarding process. So we know anytime anyone departs the company, they are offboarded in Okta and they lose their access to the entire application estate.
Perfect. All right. So moving on, I will butcher this name, so I apologize. I'm going to not try to attempt it. But the question is, what are the key risk management metrics that attract the most attention at the C-suite and board level?
Yeah, I think, the idea that you should have here is you should bring the top risks to the business, the key critical ones that you've identified for the company. A lot of companies have, hundreds of risks. We take, again, a bit of a different approach. Not everything's a risk. We're a smaller business, things like that. But you should try and identify the top 5 that you want the board or executive team to focus on and go through those with them. You should also bring metrics around how many risks do we have? How many additional risks did we add in the last quarter? What kinds of risks did we add? What criticality of risk? How long has our oldest risk been open? For our top 10 risks, what is the average age of them? Those type of metrics can help drive the business to go fix issues that may not have the visit or the focus of the company, right? You can use those metrics to say, hey, our top 5 risks, the average age is 100 days. Well, why is it 100 days? Why aren't these being fixed, right? These are the most critical ones. Why is the business not focused on closing these out? And that can drive conversations around business prioritization, because a lot of times, right, it's not that people don't want to do the right thing or go close out this risk. It's they have been told, here's all the more important things, right? And so those metrics can help you drive it. Olive, did you have any other metrics, or Josh, if you want to jump in either, that you think about?
I think you covered it, but just also including the ones that have been closed out and have been mitigated or have a treatment plan. Like where are you in that treatment plan? Just giving them an update on that.
All right. So let's fit one final question in here for you. Usually non-financial risk and financial risk are dealt with separately, or at least in different manners. How do you define financial risk versus non-financial risk? And that comes from Connor.
Olive, what are your thoughts on this one?
That kind of stopped me, but I always feel like a financial risk will definitely impact the business. So it could be a security related financial risk. It could be a compliance. I mean, it could be multiple types of financial risks. So I'm trying to think of an example of one where it would be defined differently than a non-financial risk.
Yeah, this one's a little bit hard for me, to be honest, because a lot of risk has financial implications, right, to the business. If you're not patching well and you get breached, there's brand risk, there's financial risk there too, because you're probably going to lose business. Your customers are going to leave, or you're not going to be able to close sales. And so much of the risk comes down and comes back to, hey, there can be a financial impact here as well. Cool. Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it. And we're here for you at any time. If you have any questions, you can also reach directly out at security@drata.com. We're always happy to share information or provide guidance where we can. Thank you for coming and have a great week.